Hello fellas. Welcome back to Top 5 Choices. This is Haley from Top 5 Choices, and I hope you all are doing good. In today's video, I am going to do a detailed review and pick the top 5 best PC cases, 2022. After doing proper researches, we came to the conclusion that meets the best in terms of overall. Kindly leave a like if you find this helpful, and I'd appreciate if you subscribe to my channel, and turn on post notifications if you haven't. We will be also providing affiliates link to purchase from Amazon. Kindly use it for best offers and purchase from anywhere in the world. We'll be back with more videos. Packed with premium features and top-notch thermal and acoustic performance, there are a number of reasons to choose the Cooler Master Mastercase H500M. Its ability to accommodate a wide variety of system builds makes it easy to recommend to just about anyone if they have the money. With so many companies buying for your hard-earned money, it seems like there isn't a brand out there that doesn't have a premium chassis packed with all the bells and whistles, including tempered glass panels, addressable RGB lighting, USB Type-C ports and water cooling options galore. One such company competing for your attention is Cooler Master, with the latest entry in its Mastercase line of chassis. At first glance, the Mastercase H500M, $199, looks very similar to the Mastercase H500P. But upon further inspection, you will notice subtle design differences that set this chassis apart from Cooler Master's other mid-tower offerings. It's obvious that this design is aimed at gamers who want over-the-top looks and enthusiasts who want to showcase their system builds. This chassis is made of steel and plastic and is painted black, inside and out. It measures 546 by 248 by 544 mm, LXWXH, and weighs just over 31 pounds. A slightly modified version of the industrial crossbar design featured on the Mastercase H500 and H500P, the design is visually similar to Cougar's Panzer line of cases. The top panel is made up of a large, slightly tinted tempered glass panel. Directly under this panel is an area with mounting locations for three 120mm or 140mm fans, or two 200mm fans. The airflow in the name is no idle boast. In addition to incorporating that perforated front panel, Corsair also left large gaps on either side of this perforated section that permit additional inward ventilation. The top is also perforated and covered by a large magnetic dust filter, and the back of the case has ventilation holes cut in it from top to bottom. Altogether, this makes for a clear path of low resistance for air to pass straight through the case. Two 120mm Corsair airguide fans are pre-mounted, one front, one back. To push things along, the two sides of the chassis aren't quite as friendly in the airflow department. The right panel is a solid sheet of steel, and the left panel is tempered glass, without any cut-throughs for air to flow in or out on either side. This shouldn't hamper cooling much, however, due to the abundance of ventilation elsewhere and the front-to-back design. On the inside of the case, the perforations continue. Like many other modern chassis, the 4000D airflow is broken up into two main compartments. The upper compartment holds the motherboard, whereas the lower compartment is walled off behind a shroud that holds the power supply and has room for storage devices. Unlike on most rival cases, though, the metal sheet separating these two areas is covered in the same triangular perforations seen on the front of the case. This should help to keep the power supply relatively cool. In most such case designs, the supply gets isolated and has to fend for itself in terms of air through the bottom panel. The company accidentally revealed the massive 1000D on its website, along with Amazon, a few months ago, but now it seems like the launch is finally official. The Obsidian 1000D is constructed from steel and aluminum and features tempered glass on the front and side panels. It measures 27.3 by 12.1 by 27.4 inches and weighs around 65 pounds, without any components inside. It may weigh as much as a small adult human once it's loaded with two motherboards, up to an eATX and a mini ITX, and all the attached hardware, especially if you intend on filling the gigantic case as much as possible. Both systems have their own front panel I/O, which consists of their own power, reset, and power LED leads, in addition to one USB 3.0 and USB 3.1 Gen 2 Type-C front panel connectors for each PC. The chassis doesn't come with any fans installed, but it has space for up to 13 120/140mm fans, 8 front, 3 top, 2 rear. The front panel alone can support up to two 480mm radiators, the top panel supports up to one 360mm radiator, and the back panel can sport up to a 280mm cooler. both the top and front radiator trays, fans mounts, are surprisingly accessible. They're attached to rails and glide out of the case for easy installation. The 1000 DS storage capacity is also impressive, with space for 5 3.5-inch HDDs and 6 2.5 SSD/HDDs, each with their own dedicated chamber. The HDDs are in a cage next to the PSU shroud, and the SSDs are on hinged doors behind the tempered glass. There's also a built-in Commander Pro lighting controller that can connect with Corsair-branded RGB LED fans and light strips. You can chain enough of the fan controllers for all 13 fan slots that you can adjust using Corsair's ICUE software. The chassis accommodates 2 power supplies, a full-sized ATX for the full-sized motherboard, and a SFX for the mini ATX system. The Corsair Obsidian 1000D is massive and meant to pack as much hardware as possible into its monstrous yet elegant chassis. A modest budget-oriented build would belittle the 1000DS intent, which is to be the biggest and baddest, in a good way, PC case you've ever seen. At $500, it's clearly not priced for the masses. However, for a well-off DIY PC enthusiast that wants to make a midlife crisis gaming rig with a few massive radiators, gratuitous fan and storage capacity, and a sleek tempered glass design, the Corsair Obsidian 1000D dual system PC case could be a viable, albeit not practical, option. The NZXT H710i mirrors the style of many of the company's other cases. Aesthetics being a matter of personal taste, it's hard to objectively judge a case based off of its appearance. Some folks will think that the H710i comes off looking rather bland, others will appreciate the relative lack of bling. The front I/O panel, technically, on the top of the case, is surprisingly light, with few ports and the power button. You get a single 3.5mm audio jack here, along with 2 USB 3.1 Gen 1 Type-A ports and 1 USB 3.1 Gen 2 Type-C port. You'll need an up-to-date motherboard with a Type-C header to use the latter port, so check for that or plan to shop for an adapter or a PCI Express card with the header. To connect it straight to a motherboard without the header, you'd need an adapter turning a USB 3.0 19-pin header into a USB-C header, and that would limit the port to 5 gigabits per second speeds instead of 10 gigabits per second. The interior well of the system is a bit oversized, which means the case can take a standard ATX motherboard, or even an extended ATX board. You might also notice the vertical PCI Express slots in front of the usual PCIe backplane. You can do a vertically mounted GPU in here, though like most such cases, the H710i doesn't include the hardware or GPU riser cable to make it happen. You'll have to source that yourself inside the chassis. Meanwhile, is a well-hidden premium feature, NZXT's updated fan controller. The controller looks like a perforated square and works with the company's CAM software for fan curve tweaking and optimization. The case comes with 3 of the company's 120mm Air F120 case fans pre-installed up front and one 140mm Air F140 on the rear panel. This set of gear likely pumps up the H710i's $169.99 price, so be sure you mean to use the CAM controller and the fans before diving in. If you'll just ditch or ignore them, you might want to look at the cheaper, $139.99 H710 instead. The CAM software is better than your average bear for tweaking the fan and lighting internals of the chassis. Beyond the 3 fan channels, the hardware box also can control 2 RGB LED items attached to the controller, as well as up to 4 HUE2 LED strips. Lianli's Longcool 2 mesh performance comes with, you guessed it, a mesh front panel that is easy to remove by tugging it at the bottom. The front doesn't feature any fancy design elements aside from the Lianli logo at the bottom, but if you were to install RGB fans in the front, or opt for the RGB variant, you would get a cool effect seeing the RGB lit fans through the mesh. This RGB variant costs the same $90 and comes with 3 RGB fans, but they'll be 120mm in size and you'll miss out on the fan controller and PWM control. A white RGB variant can also be had for $95. Both sides of the chassis have tempered glass panels, which is typically a controversial decision. We're not often fans of tempered glass on the cable side of a chassis as it reveals your handiwork, or lack thereof, but Lianli has placed covers over the cables to hide all the mess. The glass panels both swivel out backwards like suicide doors, but to move them you'll first have to unlatch the PSU cover hatches. All 4 swiveling panels hold themselves closed firmly with magnets, so opening your system is dead simple. Once open, you can simply lift the glass panels out of their hinges to ease assembly or maintenance. To cool your system, Lienli ships the performance variant of this case with one rear 120mm fan and two 140mm spinners at the front intake. At this price, those are wildly lavish inclusions, especially if you consider that these are PWM fans and a 3-speed fan controller comes included, too. There is no filter at the front of the case, which will help airflow. This will generate more dust in the system, but that's a compromise you'll have to be willing to make for the performance benefits. Besides, the panels open extremely easily for cleaning. The PSU intake does get a fine mesh air filter that slides out the back, which is nice as the bottom would be much more difficult to access for regular cleaning. At the top of the chassis you can mount up to two 140mm fans or a 240mm radiator, with the front supporting up to 280mm and 360mm radiators. You'll run into the PSU shroud, but it has a segment that's easily removable to make room. Thoughtful. CPU coolers can be up to 176mm, 6.9 inches, tall and GPUs up to 384mm, 15.1 inches, long.